If you are the reliable one at work, the person that everyone goes to, the person who always delivers, never lets anyone down, but you're not the one to get promoted, this might be why. I spent almost 4 years as a people consultant in a Big Four consulting firm, and as part of my job, I worked with leaders on their leadership development, looking at how they can be respected, how their authority can be seen, and how they can get promotions. And a lot of the time, we worked with people who fell into this exact pattern of being the doer, the person that everyone trusts to execute, but the person that does not get that senior promotion that they want. So by the end of this video, you'll understand why being dependable and reliable in this way doesn't get you the career growth that you want, and you'll have some specific introvert-friendly ways to be seen as leadership material and not just someone who is the doer. So first of all, let's look at why being the dependable doer is a trap that it is. And I think that comes from the fact that it's a very different thing to be doing the work that someone gives you versus leading the work. The reason being that in leading the work, there is a risk involved. And you might think that, oh, my manager is kind of keeping me in this doer position. I would argue that you are keeping yourself in the doer position because you're probably a bit too scared to take a stance or have an opinion. And we might be going in with some tough love straight away. I say this with love, genuinely, because I am that person too. I've had to navigate this journey and understand that being the person who just executes the work means that you stay safe all the time, because if something goes wrong, if it was not the right thing to do, then the responsibility is kind of not on you. You were just there just to do it, just to, complete the task. But who decides the tasks? It's probably your manager. It's probably the person leading the work. To be seen as the person who can lead the work, you actually have to have a bit of a spine and have a bit of an opinion. You need to start exercising the muscle of taking the risk of potentially being wrong. And that's exactly the thing that could bridge that gap between doing the work and actually owning the outcome. In the same way that with investing and all the other financial stuff, if you take a higher risk, you can get a higher reward usually, but equally you can also take a higher loss if you're taking that risk. So you kind of have to understand that the rules of the game are such that higher leadership position, higher salaries, and higher authority often come with the fact that if shit goes down, it's probably going to be on you, and you have to be comfortable with that, and you have to know how to put out fires, how to deal with crises, and how to reinstill trust in the people that you're managing if something does go wrong. And it's one thing to actually just think, oh yeah, I can take responsibility for this thing or that thing going wrong. But I think it's another thing for people to be seeing you actually visibly portraying those leadership qualities. And that is the visibility gap that often happens in cases where you think you're mentally ready, but you've not actually been practicing the skill outwardly yet. That's the thing that we can fall into as introverts a lot. We might be doing a lot of reflection, and obviously we are doing a lot of reflection because we're freaking introverted. But all of that, inner work and the growth and the whatever else you're doing with your mindset is nothing that anyone else sees. So the thing you need to address is the visibility gap. It's, if you're having opinions about the strategic direction that your project or your work should be going in, you need to be sharing it. And don't just let people in on your opinion itself, but also your thinking and how you got to that point. And I would just really encourage you to show your work a bit more. And the example that I would like to give is a bit out there and unrelated, but it's about getting into Oxford or Cambridge, the two top universities in the UK. Famously, their interview process and kind of the way that they assess your ability to be on a very rigorous and very demanding course is not just getting to the right answer, but it's actually showing your thinking. I personally did not apply to Oxford, so I don't know exactly what it looks like in practice, but I have watched some content that relates to preparing for it. And what I know is that sharing your thought journey and how you get to the answer is almost just as important as actually getting to the correct answer. And in fact, sometimes if your thinking is very strong and if you have good analytical skills and you ask the right questions and you kind of follow a very good process, but you get to the wrong answer at the end, sometimes that actually might be fine if they like your thinking enough. All that is to say that the thinking process and sharing it and people knowing how you think, not just what you think, is very important for them to start to trust you as someone who can lead the work. Plus, let's look at another caveat, and it's the fact that often promotions are not just based on, who got the best answer. If you've been in corporate for some time, you will know the very painful truth that I also had to discover, that promotions are very rarely based on just the skill and the ability to do the job well. It's often based on visibility, on perception, and on who is on your side. And there will be a video coming out on networking, so look out for that, because that is a very, very key part of this. But on the visibility front and the impact front, you need to be very conscious of how you talk about your work. So, sharing your thinking is one thing, but the other one is also sharing the impact that your work is having in real time. Because sometimes if you just leave it until the performance review, the talent review, or whatever it's called in your place, then it might be a bit too late to actually have people consistently see that impact coming through. As we know from marketing, it takes quite a few touch points for people to even comprehend that, oh, I've seen this brand before. It usually takes about 11 times. I have not fact checked this, but I know from my own experience, it definitely takes quite a few times for me to start thinking of something as familiar. In the same way, for people to start thinking about you as familiar in the context of leadership, in the context of impact, in the context of thinking strategically, they need to have seen you do that quite a few times, and that only comes with integrating it into your way of working, way of existing at work. It's a hard thing to do because it basically is a whole new habit, but you need to just sprinkle it in slowly, ease into it. And sharing impact might mean that you don't just say that I've done this thing, but instead you say I've done this thing that will build trust with the client. I've done this thing that will eventually convert into X amount of sales. And you might think that it is pretentious and arrogant, because I definitely started off with that judgmental standpoint, and it was annoying to me seeing people do that, because I was like, come on, man, like, you're not generating those sales. Otherwise, show me the cash. Where's the cash at? But you have to realize that that's the game, and that's what's needed to get to the promotions, to get to the salary that you might want. And if that doesn't come naturally to you, the question is it the right environment, or are you willing to play the game? And if you're willing to play the game, then here's how the game works. So let's talk about some small leadership behaviors that you can actually adopt. Thing number one is start getting used to taking ownership for the work that you have actually done. This is something that I struggled with a lot, because I so often have initiated a thing, completed a thing, led a thing, and then I would say, oh, our team just blah, blah, our team just this, our team just that, or we did this, we did that. And I know that it comes from a good place. I know that it comes from a place of sharing, sharing the reward for the good work that's done. I'm a team player. And I think sometimes it comes at the expense of me getting credit where it's deserved. And I feel uncomfortable even saying that, because it doesn't come naturally to me. I think I'm usually such a community person that I kind of forget to, in a healthy way, brag about the stuff that I have personally done. So if you're similar to me, and if it's very uncomfortable for you to say, I initiated, I completed, this might be a subtle language thing that you can tweak to actually sound more authoritative and like you're actually doing the work that you're doing. If you know that in your career, you almost never say, I did blah, blah, or I did blah, blah, then why don't you say, I did blah, blah, instead of saying we? And not to completely erase the we, because I think it's nice and I think it's very good to be a team player like that in your language as well. Just occasionally take the credit for the work that you have single-handedly done instead of diluting it at your own expense. Another leadership behavior that you can adopt is very related, and you might think conflicting, but it isn't. It is giving credit to someone else when it's due. I honestly think that it's such a power move to recognize someone else, because I think it signals a few things. One of them is that you're very observant and you've noticed other people's contribution when it happens. Secondly, A, that person will love you for it, and rightly so, because it's so nice when someone else praises you publicly and then you're just caught off guard in the most pleasant way. And then also, this is kind of the thing that a leader would do, because normally recognition comes from someone more senior than you. Be the person who very generously looks at others and recognizes their strengths. That will not only just be a nice thing to do, because you should just be nice to other people, but it's also a subtle leadership behavior that others will appreciate and recognize. Next one, again, potentially controversial and uncomfortable, but stop being a yes person all the time. Part of leadership and part of being a good leader is having really strong integrity and having a very thick skin. And this might be the unfortunate truth, but I think the further you go, the stronger you need to be on your own, in your own opinions, in your beliefs, in your values. And I think that comes with saying no sometimes when you genuinely disagree with a thing. So I don't mean, just say no to be disagreeable or just to be annoying. But I mean, if you genuinely don't believe in an idea, if you really disagree with an approach, if you really think that something is wrong, you should voice that opinion and you should stand by it and not be afraid to actually say what you think. This comes with all the usual corporate caveats of, don't say ridiculous things. But that aside, what I can tell you for sure is that being a yes person to everything will mean that people don't actually seek your opinion, because they'll know exactly what you'll say. You'll just say that you agree with whatever has been said before. And there's no value in that. I think the value of teamwork, the value of having multiple people in the same space comes from different opinions. It comes from different perspectives and people seeing things different ways, because that creates that whole that is bigger than its parts. So often, I think we as introverts, we're so adaptable to the people around us that we kind of erase our own opinions and we just become this very nice to have around person that doesn't contradict, that doesn't, create conflict, because we hate conflict. We only like consensus and people agreeing with each other. Get more comfortable with conflict and see it as a productive thing, especially if you do it right. And I think doing it right is a whole other conversation about how to have productive conflict that is respectful, that is constructive, not just saying no for the sake of saying no, but actually offering alternatives and thinking about how can you find a solution together? How about we consider this thing? Here's what it could look like. That is something that people will value a lot because it moves things forward. That's the key aspect of productive conflict, is how can you move things forward in a way that makes the team stronger rather than, make it fall apart. Next thing is have an opinion on things that are above your pay grade. For example, if we're talking about consulting, then you might be a senior consultant, which is several grades up. But if you're already thinking about sales, if you're already thinking about the client pipeline or, what client projects are coming in, if you're already building relationships that could lead to new projects, you're kind of behaving at the level of a senior manager. And I think that is the stuff that gets you promoted to a level up from where you're at. This is the irony that I've, again, had to deal with in the consulting job. It's that you have to be performing at the grade above yours for a very long time until you actually get paid for it and get there. But you know what? With time, I've actually started to grow a bit fonder of that approach, because I think it makes sense. It's kind of you proving that you can operate at the next level before you're there, so that when it comes to the decision of whether to promote you or not, it's kind of a no-brainer. And, I've done videos as well on how that should be a visible effort, that you can't just be doing this and not talking about it. You need to be also seen doing this stuff. If you're interested in this, you can watch my videos on visibility and your positioning at work. But that is the stuff that gets you there sooner than other people, because if you have to prove your case that, oh no, I definitely I can perform at the next level up, like here's why, here's how I would do it. If instead you just show people that, by the way, I've been doing this already for like 6 months, so I don't need to prove anything. Here's the proof already. Everyone's seen it. Then it's a much easier decision. There's so much more that I can say, but I'm running out of time. If you're interested in this work, I've created something that might be able to help you see exactly where your issue with positioning at work, with getting those promotions, with being seen lies, and it's a 3-minute quiz. It's super easy. I'm gonna leave the link in the description down below. You can check it out. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.